Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our audience members across the country and indeed around the world. I'm Kendra Kapelke, co-editor of Passenger, and I'm speaking to you from Baltimore, Maryland. On behalf of the Passenger staff, thank you all so much for joining us today for what promises to be a wonderful reading by the first Henry Morgenthau III Poetry Prize winner, Dennis H. Lee. Today's celebration is in two parts. Act one, as it were, will honor Henry Morgenthau's transformation as a poet. In Act two, we'll introduce you to and celebrate the work of the first Morgenthau Prize winner, Dennis H. Lee. Before Dennis reads, you'll hear from two of Henry's children, Kramer and Sarah, and Passenger's contest judge, David Keplinger, who will introduce Dennis. We're using the Zoom webinar format, which for all of you in the audience means that you can only see the people speaking and will not be able to see each other. And no one will hear you either, so no worries about barking dogs or phones ringing. If you do hear a dog, it's mine, since I can't mute her. And just so you know, this is Passenger's first online reading, so we apologize in advance for any glitches. We're recording this reading and we'll post it on Passenger's website as soon as we figure out how. If you know anyone who you think might enjoy it, send them to passengerbooks.com and look for it under events. And please contact us anytime you need help. So let's talk about Henry Morgenthau and the prize. Passenger's Henry Morgenthau III Poetry Prize is awarded to a poet 70 or older who has not yet published a book of poems. The winning manuscript is selected by a nationally recognized poet. This year, we were honored to have as our judge David Keplinger, Henry's poetry teacher and mentor. This prize is a really big deal in the literary world. For years, there have been prizes like the Yale Younger Poets Award for writers under 40. The Morgenthau Prize acknowledges the quality of new older poets and their remarkable imagination. Passenger's mission is to make public the passions of older writers and to fight ageist thinking. Today, with so many older Americans suffering in increased isolation, unable for months now to see their families, we need to hear these voices more than ever. We owe a huge debt of gratitude to the very special Morgenthau family for helping us to establish this prize. When Henry died, it was the family's wish to list Passenger in his obituary for donations, and then the prize was born. Passenger's co-editor, Mary Azriel, and I got to know Henry when he submitted a few poems to our literary journal. He was in his upper 90s and had just recently found poetry as a new form of expression. We later published his book, A Sunday in Purgatory, when Henry was 99. At age 100, he gave readings at the legendary Politics and Prose bookstore in Washington, D.C., and also at the University of Baltimore. Afterwards, some of the students in the audience told me they will never forget watching Henry light up the room with his remarkable poems and presence. I highly recommend you go to Passenger's website and watch some of that amazing reading. Before the pandemic shut things down, we were going to host the book launch at Politics and Prose in honor of Henry's reading there. As sorry as we are that we can't gather in person, this online format allows us to assemble across the country, around the world, and beyond. Henry, we hope your internet connection is working. And now I'd like to introduce Henry's son, Kramer Morgenthau. Kramer?
Thank you, Kendra. Lovely introduction, and this is a wonderful event to be a part of. I see there's a lot of participants on here, and people from all over, from both Henry's life and I'm sure from Dennis's life. If my father were with us today, he certainly would have adapted to this Zoom technology with a fervor. He was forever a curious soul, and he enjoyed new things about our world, both in technology and in the arts. I think part of what kept him alive for so long was his curiosity about the world and people in it. He was so full of life and stories about his long tenure on this special planet. I think he was always searching for ways to express himself, and he was fortunate enough to have discovered David Keplinger's class and eventually get introduced to Kendra at Passenger. And poetry gave him a whole new chapter in the final years of his life. And that included a great social experience with the people in the class and those of us who were fortunate enough to read and interact with his first writings. 2020 is a very challenging twist in the history of our planet. It's a real doozy. And we can all learn from my father's innovative ways of making the best of what the human mind has to offer us. In many ways, my dad wrestled with complicated and sometimes dark feelings, and some of that came out in his poetry. And I think also in the way he lived his life, giving voice to those who needed a platform. But he was always vibrant, curious, and passionate about the world around him, participating in it and enriching the lives of people around him up until his very last days. I think he would have been thrilled to know about this poetry prize and that our family, Sarah and Ben and myself, are participating in it. And he'd be so happy to pass a torch on to Dennis H. Lee. Denny, or Dennis, the pressure is on. And now I'd like to introduce my sister, Sarah, who is, also a great inspiration and has taken some of the tools that my dad passed us and is on fire. So, Sarah, we love you, and give it to us.
Thank you, Kramer and Ben. I'm going to read A Sunday in Purgatory by Henry Morgenthau III, read by his daughter, Sarah Morgenthau. A voluntary inmate immured in a last resort for seniors, there are constant reminders. The Reaper is linking around the corner. I am at home, very much at home, here at Ingleside at Rock Creek, distant 3 miles from my caring daughter. At Ingleside, a faith-based community for vintage Presbyterians, but I am an old Jew, but that's another story. I'm not complaining with so much I want to do, doing it at my pace, slowly. Anticipation of death is like looking for a new job. Then suddenly on a Sunday, talking recklessly while eating brunch, a grisly piece of meat lodges in my throat. I struggle for breath, too annoyed to be scared. Someone pounds on my back to no avail. Out of nowhere, an alert, pint-sized waiter performs the Heimlich maneuver. I don't believe it. It'll work. It does. Uncorked. I'm freed. Looking up, I see the concerned visage and reversed collar of a retired Navy chaplain, pinch hitting as God's messenger for the day. Had he come to perform the last rites, to ease my passage from this world to be there hereafter? Don't jump to dark conclusions. In World War II, on active duty, he learned the Heimlich as well as the Himmlich. Knowing it best administered to a standing victim, he rushed to intervene. On this day, I am twice blessed with the kindness of strangers.
Thank you, Sarah. And a quick hello to the poets at the Ingleside Retirement Community, where Henry really got his start. It's a wonderful group of writers there. who encourage and inspire one another under the teaching of Bonnie Narasdi. So now I'd like to present David Keplinger, our distinguished judge of the Morgenthau Prize. David is the author of 6 books of poetry, most recently Another City, which was awarded the 2019 UNT Rilke Prize, and The Long Answer, New and Selected Poems. He is the recipient of the 2020 Emily Dickinson Award from the Poetry Society of America and teaches poetry at American University in Washington, D.C. David?
Thanks, Kendra, and thanks to the Morgenthau family, and my congratulations to Dennis today. I have been asked to say a couple of words about Henry and also to introduce our esteemed poet, Dennis Lee, and I'm very happy to do so. It's really my pleasure to be here. I first met Henry in the summer of 2012 when it was announced that I was teaching a class called Collaborating with the Dead at the Writers Center. And I got a lot of interest in the class based on that course title alone. And lo and behold, one day I got an email from Henry Morgenthau, who I had not met yet. And the email was just a few sentences. This is what it said. Dear David, I'd like to join your workshop this fall, but I'm intimidated by the label advanced. Writing poetry is for me a long-delayed vocation. As you'll discover in my letter published in the New Yorker last year, and he attached this letter, I'm a very senior citizen. I'm forwarding some samples of my writings for you to advise me if I'm qualified. On the bright side, I may be better prepared for collaborating with the dead than other aspiring bards applying for your guidance. So that last sentence convinced me that whoever this was, I wanted him in my class. And it was so true of Henry that he brought wit and willingness everywhere he went. Wit and willingness. There's a kind of Marcus Aurelius quality to Henry's lifestyle that I so admired. Just a cheerfulness in light of whatever was going on, and what Kramer said about his willingness to try a Zoom reading, his willingness to be a part of a poetry community and to try a new vocation, no matter the age, really marked his style in life, and he had a style. It was a great pleasure to become not only his teacher but his friend, and also a great pleasure to judge this competition, which yielded a lot of great entries. The books that I read were all as good enough to be published, and finally, after some time, I decided on Dennis Lee's book, Tidal Wave, which is a hell of a book. And I'm just going to read from my citation from the collection. What I wrote was, Tidal Wave is a serious achievement, carrying off what Charles Simic called the said quality of growing up and growing older, as if these two worlds existed simultaneously on parallel planes. Much of childhood abides in Dennis Lee's recollection of the shape and meaning of a button. In offices where doctors ride small horses into the waiting rooms of life, and analysts sit in spare, unfurnished rooms whose offer of a cup of coffee would mean so much. In the fortune cookie that offers not wisdom but a dance. I admire the intelligence and the honesty of these poems, and the sense of life constantly at the threshold of a change of heart. Their tides are driven by moon powers, the lift of the spirit, the swell of the imagination, the crashing body, and at last the undertow of memory. So it's my deep pleasure to introduce Dennis Lee to you all, and to congratulate Dennis on the publication of his book and the prize itself. So I'll leave it to him to take over.
Hello. I'd like to thank everyone for coming. I would like to thank the people at Passenger for taking me on this wonderful trip notably in this year 2020, wow. I would like to acknowledge the Morgenthau family for their part in creating the Henry Morgenthau III Poetry Prize. Really. And I would especially like to thank David Keplinger, the judge, who chose my work. In this first poem, My Analyst, I make reference to the ability to see through walls. I'm not a fan of see-through walls, and I wanted you to know that up front. My Analyst. My analyst has no email address. He does not carry a cell phone. There is no window in his office and only one chair. He has no desk, really, just a small table, like a coffee table, to put his coffee on. He writes with a pencil on a yellow pad. The only item I have really taken notice of is a small yellow pencil sharpener, the kind I used to have in a pencil case in grade school. I focused in on that. He told me his mother gave it to him and not to his brother. This is something he has brought up often in our sessions. Sometimes, when I sense tenseness in his face, when he can't stop fiddling with the sharpener, I ask him about the day his mother gave it to him. When he repeats the story of that day, I can see the skin on his forehead relax. He looks at the outside wall as if through a window he wishes was there. I know I am reaching him. He has brought another cup into the room. Soon, I believe he will ask me if I would like some coffee. I spent a lot of my growing up time on Coney Island. Coney Island, July 4th, 1952. Uncle Nathan rubs back the hair over blue numbers, chants Hebrew psalms, then slips away to a heavy wooden chair planted to face the fence where my father watches a ball game through slats that will never be fixed. On its way to taunt Uncle Nathan, Grandma's beef smoke oils the undersides of leaves on her favorite maple. My father sprawls out, holds a sun reflector, feet dug into sand down to where it's cool. Grandma's maple, parchment dry. Chicken fat soaks into brown paper bags 3 floors up on the clean white kitchen windowsill. I sit on the fire escape with kosher chicken and comics. Grandma speaks Yiddish into the soup. Tonight's sky will be brighter than the Ferris wheel. This next poem might help explain what is lost when a young boy doesn't get to sit in a classroom as I did. Candle in the Universe. We sat at our desks. Tony kept clicking his inkwell. Miss Torpo would turn and look his way, and he'd stop instantaneously, then start again. But she was distracted. Mr. Ostenbrunner was setting up. He had placed a white candle in the middle of her completely clear desktop. He was now placing balls at different lengths around the candle. A baseball, a ping pong ball, a tennis ball, and some other rubbery looking balls, the kind little kids play with. And he would step back, and then to the desk, and moving the balls, even a soccer ball. And some of us were watching, and some of us were talking. And Miss Torpo would rap a piece of chalk quickly on the blackboard to signal, shut up. Mr. Ostenbrunner was the man we would see in the halls on a ladder, changing a light bulb or painting over a door frame, or outside fixing a loose door closer, or in the boys' room, putting a sign over a sink or toilet, broken, do not use. He could appear almost anywhere, just walk in during class, fix something, then walk out. Now, here he was in our class, still in his white overalls, about to teach us something. And again, Miss Torpo rapped the chalk fast and sharp and loud, and we all stopped and looked forward. Mr. Ostenbrunner will now bring us the universe, she announced. But first, I need volunteers to bring down the window shades. 4 boys jumped up and each began pulling hard and fast on the cords connected to the shades. And there was terrible squeaking and rolling noises, and dust began to float in the air. Beautiful dust particles captured by the sun, still streaking past the shades where they didn't quite fit. And Mr. Ostenbrunner lit the candle, and we all watched as the flame flickered and a thin stream of dark smoke rose up toward the very high ceiling. He pointed at the candle. The sun, he said, and he was sure of it. He picked up the baseball. Earth, he said, and began to walk around Miss Torpo's desk, round and round. Louis, the kid in the back row, was waving his hand back and forth and making moaning sounds. What is it, Louis? Said Miss Torpo. I have to go to the bathroom, he said, but I don't want to miss the baseball going around the candle. No, Mr. Ostenbrunner said, pointing. Sun, and here, earth. Okay, Louis yelled as he ran out of the room. I just have to pee, so I'll be back before the sun burns out. And we giggled and watched the black smoke rise. And Mr. Ostenbrunner sat down. Restaurants may be closed to eat and dining, but we all can remember what fun they were. Places where you could sit down and just place an order for whatever you would like in the spur of that moment. Tea and cream with a coffee bean. Tea and cream with a coffee bean. What? Tea and cream with a coffee bean, please. Is that your order? Yes, that's it for now. Can I keep the menu? You mean take it? No, just here, while I'm here at the table. Sure. So is that something you saw on the menu, on our menu? What, tea and cream with a coffee bean? No. Actually, I do see tea on the menu, and I imagine you serve cream for the tea. I'm hoping you may have a coffee bean in the kitchen. If so, could I have that on the side? So you want tea with cream and a coffee bean on the side. Actually, I would like a cup of hot water with a tea bag, cream, possibly in a little pitcher or such, so I could pour it to my liking. And yes, the coffee bean on the side. You would not want the bean in the tea. You mean the hot water? Yes, no. Hello, is there some trouble here at this table? No, sir. This customer just wants a special order. Something that is not on our menu? Sort of not. I have just ordered tea and cream with a coffee bean. The tea is certainly on the menu, and I assume the cream can be ordered with the tea, like milk or cream with coffee. And because I do see coffee on the menu, I was hoping to get a coffee bean. If you see that as extra, then please charge me. This customer makes perfect sense. Please, no problem. Enjoy your meal, or rather your tea with your coffee bean. And my cream, thank you. My grandmother had a treadle sewing machine. I don't know how many of you remember those. She just used foot power to keep it going, no electricity. Grandma's buttons. Ticking on a wooden sewing table in the parlor, spilling onto the floor, getaways. And I creep down, head between the legs of the table. Above me, the drawer and its wonderful mechanism that lets it slide open, close. And I'm feeling for the buttons, flat wishbones, rounded ones that feel like wood, that aged wood. And above, the thunder, Grandma's pouring buttons into a round metal tin that held butter cookies from Aunt Celia, who painted her chalk face with pink powder, or so it seemed to me. This next poem was inspired by someone who likes to take his pet to the office. It's in 3 parts. My doctor's dog. 1. My doctor's dog is quite efficient. He brings the clipboard over to new patients or to those of us who need to update our information. I don't mind the bite marks on the forms, but I do mind the slobber on the pen. Although the office now has tissue boxes distributed for us complainers. Often, he'll lie down and put his head on your shoe. I really don't like it when he sits and scratches or sniffs all over your legs. No, it's not cute. 2. So I'm out looking again. I sure hope I don't get sick. Maybe I should make appointments, given their earliest is 3 weeks out. A coworker told me about a doctor who rides a small horse into the exam room. His nurse announces his imminent arrival with great fanfare. I really don't believe it. 3, I finally found a pretty good doctor. He does have chickens who run loose in the front yard squawking, but the wait is short. Problem is, his license to practice might get suspended. So I've begun self-healing. This may be the American solution to healthcare. I only give myself 15 minutes for diagnosis, and I always prescribe ice cream, but I vary the flavor. I've lived a dozen places in my life, but I'm not sure how common this experience may be. The barking woman. She lived in a house attached to another house, which was attached to another house, and so on and so forth. And whenever she was there, she was barking. She could be heard barking at her children. They, in turn, could be heard barking. In the morning, the afternoon, and evening, she would be barking. At night, the barking would stop. But in the morning, barking. Outside her house, barking with her children, and they would leave her as they continued their barking, and she too, barking. And on it went. Her barking would sometimes be louder and accompanied by slamming, and the children too, slamming and jumping and slamming while barking. One day, one of her neighbors noticed smoke drifting out of her front windows. But when she was told, she started slamming harder and barking louder. So everyone tried to avoid her, just stay out of her way. And the smoking continued, and the barking continued, and the slamming continued. One day, she bought a small, quiet dog who would not bark. She spent days and weeks and months training that dog, but he would not bark. He would sit up and look at her, wag his tail, while the children ran around slamming, but he would not bark. She left the house in a huff with her children. They were slamming and barking, and she drove off and was gone for hours. hours. And the little dog began pacing around the house, trying to see out of a window. He scratched and scratched at the bottom of the front door. And someone said that on that day, that little dog began barking and barking and barking and has not stopped barking. There are 3 more poems. Some of you probably can't imagine falling asleep on a noisy subway, but I was an expert at that. Leaning in my tired seat. Leaning in my tired seat, falling down the tube of sleep in a subway. Screech-like sounds, smell of electric spark. To Brooklyn, Coney Island. Last stop, where the Mermaid Avenue bus turns around to go back to 37th Street from whence I came. My mother, a little child dressed up in white, even white shoes, holds a Charlotte Russe white cup in her little hand. She has not taken a lick nor a bite as she looks up at her mother's mother, who has opened a white umbrella to shield the sun on this summer day, just outside Seagate, that special gated community. Her mother has crossed the last street to join them for their walk along the Seagate fence toward the beach, the boardwalk. Up the wooden ramp they go, mother's white boot heels clapping thinly against the planks, a steady, slow walk up. And mother can see the round, thick silver railing that runs along the boardwalk's edge, where it looks out over the wide expanse of beach to the Atlantic Ocean. Grandpa is sitting on a bench there, sleeping, dreaming of Russia, of cows and a small fenced pasture along the road he walks, carrying eggs and a basket for his grandmother, who had kind blue eyes, sad but kind. Her husband had just died, and she was now alone, it seemed. But grandfather would sit with her and listen to the story of how they met, how a matchmaker came to her father with the news, and how they made a life together, not really her dream. And the smell of electric track and the hissing of machine penetrates and brings back this place again where unconscious and conscious need to meet, to bring time to life. It seems that humans are always trying to improve on nature. Dryer sheets. Hello, Mrs. Bloom. What are you doing in the yard with dryer sheets? Oh, these are wonderful. They smell so much better than my roses. I just put a box of sheets on sticks among my rose bushes. You're right. These really smell. Smelling like a rose was always overrated. Look, here comes Gladys. Wow, I could smell those from across the street. They smell stronger than my laundry. Mrs. Bloom has added dryer sheets in her rose bushes to get rid of that rosy smell. Wow, it works. I can't even smell my clothes, let alone all my perfume. I used half the bottle. Paul, my neighbor, rubs dryer sheets on his baby. He says it's much better than baby's powder smell and so grown up. These dryer sheets should shoo away any rodents from my garden. They really stink. I'll bet the Garden Society would love to hear about this. Hi, everybody. I was just doing my laundry when this new smell came right through my closed windows. I had to throw extra dryer sheets in my wash to cover it up. It is dryer sheets. No. These are roses. No more, said Mrs. Bloom. Better. This will be the last poem in the reading. It's also the last poem in the book. Tidal wave. White Lake is what we called it, but it was really Kanianga Lake. Our hotel was the Rosedale. We began going when I was very young, maybe 8. We knew the owner. My parents did, and I did too. The Catskills. The hotel was very simple. The meals too. But the lake, the water was like drinking water, that clear. A wooden dock with steps that led into the water. It was shallow. I could even walk out on the hard sandy bottom. Then there was a drop. You knew it before you reached it. A sure slope began, and you could just turn around and walk back. Or you begin swimming right from the dock steps. Standing on the dock after sunrise on a calm day, the lake was like a mirror, filled with sky. I began fishing there. My father taught me. We caught sunnies. When I let my line down into the water, they surged to eat the bait. It was not hard to catch one. I kept them alive in a pail and let them loose again. I was very good at this. As I got older, I began to fish for bass using lures. The water was so clear that I could see a fish 30 feet out and try to cast in front of it. I only fished just after sunrise or just before sunset. It was at sunset when it happened. The whole lake was shaped like a baby rattle. There was a large roundish area in the north and a large roundish area in the south, joined by a straight area about a mile wide. At the dock, I looked across a 2-mile span of water. During the day, the lake was busy with motorboats, water skiers, canoes, rowboats, sailboats, swimmers. There were even people fishing, on boats and from shore. But just after sunrise, silence. And just before sunset, peace. I shut the clicking of my reel off because of the noise. I was casting and reeling in. I could hear my lure click into the lake when it landed, casting and reeling in. And then a new sound, faint at first, but growing in intensity. I kept reeling in, listening for where the sound was coming from, even louder. My part of the sky was still clear, my part of the lake still. But out there, toward the middle of the lake, it was dark. And what looked like a wall of water, a giant wave, was coming right at me. I dropped my rod and ran for the hotel. I could feel my heart pound. I remembered a wave at Coney Island when I was about 6 that lifted me and carried me up the beach, people screaming. Water began to cover me. Rainwater, a deluge of rain. I was running so incredibly wet and happy. That's it. Thank you all very much for coming and listening. I appreciate it.
Wow, that last poem, I've never, ever, ever encountered a poem like that, where there's a poem going on and there's something underneath going on. And it feels like that's how we're living right now. You've just said it so beautifully with your title of this book, Tidal Wave. It is our life, and it couldn't be more timely. So that was really beautiful. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, and the book is launched. And launched sounds like a new word to me. I feel like we're all astronauts going out into space. And we are trying to understand what it means to launch things. How does that really feel to us now? How does it feel to live right now? And you have a way of describing life that seems like nothing else to me. So I wish, I celebrate with you, I congratulate you. I hope Tidal Wave has a long and happy life, and you may now kiss the book. You're officially married. Official. It's official.
I kissed the book.
Thank you. To everyone watching and listening, we hope you will order a copy of Tidal Wave and spend some time with these poems. It's very different to see them on the page and to be with them by yourself. So here's how you can order. You can go to Passager's website at www.passagerbooks.com. At the top of the page, click Books, and that will take you to Tidal Wave, which has a link to our store. And we know it's not quite as easy as Amazon, but we just want to remind you all that all of your dollars go to supporting Passager. So if you can click a couple more times, that will help us tremendously. And for additional $10, you can receive Henry Morgenthau's book, A Sunday in Purgatory. And finally, if you believe in our mission to elevate the voices of older writers, we hope you will donate to Passager or to the Morgenthau Prize. Go to passagerbooks.com and click on Donate at the top of the home page. And while you're there, you can sign up for our weekly emails and discover different ways that you can connect with Passager and its writers. Before we say goodbye, seemed like it went by very fast, but I want to thank the Morgenthau family for your warmth and enthusiasm too. It means a lot to us. And to David Keplinger for your beautiful introduction. Thank you again for serving as our judge. And to our wonderful poet, Dennis Lee, for beautiful reading. You've taught me what you can do with your hands on the screen to make words come alive. And of course, everyone at Passager, Mary Israel, Christine Drawl, Roseanne Singer, Panta Tofanchi, and John Shore for putting this event together. And I just want to say, stay safe, everyone, and nurture your imagination. We hope to see you all very soon. Bye-bye.